What's up, folks? Your favorite sorcerer, Aurelius Sopax, on the 10th of January, 2026. While having my second coffee today. And in this video, I want to talk about Egregores, Egregore magic, and how magic actually runs the world. Okay, so I want to talk about that specifically in the context of what I call the Spirit Prism Matrix, which is the control system behind the system. Okay, so most people understand that politicians don't run the show, right? But it's not, let's say, money that runs the game. There's a game behind the game, which I call the Spirit Prism Matrix, which is a magical, spiritual, esoteric control system that is what runs the show on this planet. And in this context, egregores are very, very important. Now, before I go into the actual breaking down of this stuff, for those of you who are coming across this channel first time, or maybe don't know who I am, let me give you a quick idea of who I am, right? So at the filming of this video, I'm 41 years old. I was born and raised in Germany. My heritage, lineage, family can be traced back, has been traced back to ancient Egyptian pharaoh and priest castes. My esoteric and magical training began at the age of 13. I've had many great teachers, some of them nice, some of them not so nice. And when you combine, let's say 30 years of practice of this mentor, then 20 years of practice of this mentor, and so on and so forth, all of them together had a combined practice of somewhere around 900 years. And I was lucky enough, blessed enough to receive a lot of their teachings and insights that was bestowed upon me. I was gifted with that. And so my own practice is also more than 20 years, my own magical practice. And yeah, I was initiated in many, let's say, esoteric orders and systems. And that all under the umbrella of being prepared of, eventually, I was supposed to take on certain roles and functions in the Spirit Prism Matrix myself. Now, I speak 5 languages, 3 of them completely fluently and cleanly. My academic training is I have a master's degree in molecular biology. I've also been trained in finance. I've also worked in the financial industry for a short amount of time, primarily at the level of estate planning and financial advisory. And in 2015, based on spiritual influences, or the influence of certain spiritual forces, as well as the encouragement of a very famous friend, I started teaching magic online. I started to put out videos and build a following and students. And by now I've trained thousands of people in practical magic. I also have a magical order, and I'm also the developer and creator of the magical system of the Grail of the Serpent, which is, now, it is a very innovative, extremely powerful, and the best magical system out there, because it is dependent on you being connected to your God self. Okay? This is all I'm going to say here, because otherwise it would take a little bit too long. So let's get into the video. while ago, I made a post on social media in which I intended to break down the spirit prison matrix, or how egregores actually work. Okay, so let me read this to you as a context, and then I'm going to go into the rest of the video. The hidden formula behind global mass control and how to reverse it. The entire world is a stage. Most people hear that line and think it's poetic, philosophical. But what if I told you it's literal? What if the stage isn't a metaphor, but a technology? Because here's what 99.9% of people don't know. Occult mass manipulation is a science. It's not a theory. It's not a conspiracy. It's a discipline with formulas, components, and precision deployment. And unless you understand the formula, you're inside of the play and not directing it. Not escaping it, just reacting like a programmed actor. Now let me show you the formula. This is not guesswork. This is how reality is architected by those who know the rules. Heterotopia plus ritual equals egregore, and that's it. That's how you create a mass psycho-spiritual spell. And the moment you understand this, you gain access to the steering wheel of collective perception. Let's break it down, because once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. Heterotopia means a different place. That was coined by French philosopher Michel Foucault, and it refers to real physical locations that are used to stage alternate realities. Now that concept obviously is not created by Michel Foucault, but he was the one that developed that or created that term, heterotopia. Okay, good. Heterotopia means different place, coined by French philosopher Michel Foucault. It refers to real physical locations that are used to stage alternate realities. Think theaters, stadiums, hospitals, churches, fashion shows, red carpets, even festivals like Burning Man or Davos. These are ritual grounds disguised as entertainment or administration. And in each, normal societal rules are suspended and new symbolic laws are enacted. Inside these spaces, rituals are performed. Not fake candle lighting or gold sacrificing, usually, but symbolic sequences, scripted actions with deep archetypal meaning. The Oscars, not just a show. It's a hierarchical priesthood ceremony broadcast globally. The World Cup, a planetary level gladiatorial ritual with tribal rooting energies. These rituals create a liminal state, a temporary loss of identity. And into that void, new programs are installed. When millions of minds are focused on the same symbolic act, this is called an egregore. It creates one. It's not a metaphor, it's a real psycho-spiritual being created from mass mental energy, and it doesn't disappear after the ritual ends. It lives on, feeding, growing, influencing decision-making from the unconscious. This is why wars get greenlit overnight, why people accept control without question, why trends and moral shifts seem to just happen. They don't. They're engineered by those who master heterotopia plus ritual equals egregore. That formula. Now, here's the part that changes everything. If this formula works for them, it can work for you. But only if you stop acting like an extra in someone else's story and start authoring your own mythic operating system. How? That's where I come in. My name is Aurelius Sopex, and I teach elite level esoteric technologies that reverse engineer this formula, not to destroy it, but to wield it for your personal dominion. Good. So let me break this down one more time. How is the world actually controlled through magic? We have to understand, see, in some other videos, I went into the concept of truth, and I define truth as not a subjective thing. I define truth as factors in the physical universe, okay? In the matter, energy, space, and time universe. Something that is observable and can be agreed upon by more than one person, okay? This is not about my truth, my subjective truth, blah, blah, blah. A truth is something that can be verified. So we're automatically talking about the physical universe here, okay? So any magic that is real in some way or another has to take effect in the physical universe. So just to get that out of the way. Now, there are also things like mysticism and theurgy and all that stuff. And listen, they have their purpose in magic and they have their important role. But there's really no way to verify that. So magic, first and foremost, in order to be taken seriously and have any kind of meaning beyond the subjective universe of the individual, has to take effect in the physical. I hope we can agree on that. And a truth, as I have defined it, must be able to be defined in terms of the matter, energy, space, and time universe, okay? So matter, what's and who was involved? Energy, what was the sequence of events? Because particles in motion equals energy. Space, where did it take place? And time, when did it take place? And when you have those four factors together, you have a truth, and you have to build your mental, spiritual, you have to build your worldview on truths. And if you don't do that, you'll be very wobbly and easy to destroy. This is the problem that a lot of magicians have, because they're not able to anchor their magic. Okay? They're not able to anchor their magic in the physical universe. So in their heads, in their minds, they're these great and powerful magicians that supposedly talk to gods, but the physical reality is pathetic. The physical reality that they create is pathetic. Let's get that out of the way. Real magic has to take effect in the physical universe. So when we're talking about egregores and egregore magic, we're talking about how magic is used to control actual fucking physical events. Okay? So this is not some vague, airy-fairy stuff. Number two, after that definition, how are the more subtle dimensions connected to the physical dimension? Magic is the control over the electromagnetic force, you could say. The electromagnetic force, manipulated, structured. When you manipulate the electromagnetic force, it structures energy fields across the different layers of existence. One of the biggest problems and that's very intentional, please understand, that's also part of the Spirit Prism Matrix that feeds you false ideas so that you can't empower yourself. You have to an extent, apply the laws of physics to the mind. And when you're able to make that jump, a lot of confusion and a lot of problems in your life are going to resolve themselves. When you apply the laws of physics to the mind and you treat the mind not as something obscure and completely ungraspable, you can actually bring order to the mind, and you're able to transfer your will from a higher level into the physical universe. Good. How does that work? Good. So the mind is, first of all, it's not something that takes place inside of your brain. Your brain is like a device, just like a computer is downloading information from the internet, okay? But not the internet of the mind is the psychosphere or noosphere, okay? Just like there's a biosphere of biological organisms, there's also a sphere, a system of thoughts and emotions, okay? And that takes on a planetary scale at one point, of course, right? But we have to begin with your own personal universe right now, okay? So your own personal universe consists of energy fields. I know you probably perceive yourself as a biological organism, but even biological organisms are primarily electromagnetic beings, okay? Your entire nervous system and your life force is electromagnetic energy. that which gives life to this thing and keeps it in place. Now, there's an illusion of physical stability, but those are really just energy fields that assemble particles for a certain amount of time, and that is what we define as physical events. All right? So physical objects are primarily energy fields. These energy fields are electromagnetic in nature, and they have a certain constitution, shape. All right? The sequence of manifestation is the following. The mind influences the emotional, and the emotional influences life force, or the direction of life force, and the assembly, direction, flow of life force determines physical events. Okay. Magic is creating, directing, reassembling, redesigning those energy fields that are the blueprint for physical events. That's in essence a magical ritual. The tools that we use in order to construct those rituals are archetypes. At the mental level, we construct a coherent worldview, a cosmology, you could say. Okay, so what is the highest principle? From that highest principle, we create sub-ideas. In their totality, they come back and represent the totality of existence, the first principle. That's when we're talking about monistic worldviews. Monistic meaning everything can be traced back to one original principle, right? But to keep it simple, we're going to stick to this idea, right? So there's a highest principle, and that highest principle is dissected and turned into subparts, okay? This is often described as a pantheon, okay? A pantheon is a group of gods, so to speak, and that group of gods is very hierarchical, and each one of those gods has their own individual dominion. The field and the area of life, the area in that specific cosmology that they control, right? Whether you're talking about, let's say, Roman gods, Egyptian gods, even the runes, any magical system. When you're working with these archetypes, you're dealing with principles first and foremost, and all of those principles combined create the totality of existence. Okay, and the totality of existence, in order for it to take place, must compartmentalize itself. Okay, so everything is one, but it breaks itself down into. It compartmentalizes itself into different parts, and now there can be an interaction between those different parts. Remember, a game, in order for something to take place, there must be opposing forces first and foremost. Without opposing forces, there is nothing that can take place. It's a dual universe. It's a dual universe. Without dark, there's no light. Without black, there's no white. Without male, there is no female. You get what I'm saying? There is no all of these poles exist on a spectrum, and these poles require each other in order to have a dynamic taking place, okay? So all of existence, which began with a highest principle, an idea, is compartmentalized and broken down into different concepts. This is the conceptual, mental, archetypal level, okay? And each one of those subparts, these compartments, are there's something called anthropomorphic projection, meaning they are filled with human qualities, something that we can relate to. Okay, so this is why, let's say, Jupiter, which is supposedly a god, is filled with human aspects, something that humans can relate to. And there's a specific reason for that. Why? Because if humans can relate to a deific mask or an archetype, they can fill it with energy, you see. They can fill it with emotions, they can relate. And this whole game is about control of energy. Please understand that. It's the control of life force, electromagnetic energy, that is the key to magic. So now we have constructed a mental level, okay? Now there's a story that is being told, which is the dynamic interaction of these archetypes, okay? So let's say two archetypes are at war with each other. You can transfer that in terms, you can tell that story. There's a war, there's a battle between those. Ideally, it's a war that never ends, obviously, right? Because you don't want the cosmology to end. But within this cosmology, there are many, many stories that can take place, you know? And humans are very susceptible to stories. That's the earliest way of teaching things. It's also something that captures attention. When you're good at telling stories, you can capture the attention of people and you can speak to their subconscious and you can direct and guide the flow of their emotional energy, their psychosexual energy. Electromagnetic energy, you see. So when you're watching a movie, the Fantastic Four is a good example. Let's say all of you, hopefully everybody here is familiar with Fantastic Four, which is a movie. By the way, Hollywood, you know, like you have to understand where that name comes from. Hollywood, that the name for that place comes from Hollywood, which was the divination tool of Druids. Okay, so art is magic, and big art studios know exactly what they're doing there. Of course, constructing and performing magical rituals in front of your eyes, and you're the consumer or the battery whose energy, whose life force is being directed towards something very specific. Okay, so in the case of the Fantastic Four, is just so easy to see that I'm going to use that as an example. So the Fantastic Four, superheroes, right? Superheroes. Well, they're demigods with all these superpowers. That's archetypes, but not just any archetypes. They represent, obviously, the four elements, okay? So you got the Thing, which is very solid, hard, strong. That represents the element of earth. You got the Torch, right? Who could he represent? What element could he represent? Obviously, that's fire, right? And then you got the Female with her psychic powers, more or less, who represents water. And then you got Mr. Fantastic, who's very flexible and all that stuff. Sorry, she represents air, and he represents water, who's very flexible and all that stuff. You get what I'm saying? So these archetypes then are shown in front of you. Remember, heterotopia. I mentioned cinemas, I think. That was one of the ones that I mentioned here. Heterotopia. Think theaters. Yeah, theaters, stadiums, all of that stuff, right? So theaters. What you're saying is not you think you're watching a movie, but what you're actually observing is a magical ritual. It's a symbolic interaction. It's an interaction of archetypes, a symbolic play that is telling you a story on how these elements are creating a new outcome. These archetypes are connected to life force within you, okay? And as you're observing water and air and fire being reorganized in a specific way, at an unconscious, instinctual, psychosexual, pre-rational level. Your energy is being hijacked, and the outcome of that, of course, is in some way or another, also symbolized within the movie. So what that creates is a new energy field that has now been fed with your energy. Okay, now everybody to an extent is aware that, let's say, big movie studios and other things are propaganda machines, right? But few people really understand what that propaganda is for. What is being done is, a lot of people call that predictive programming. But what that is essentially, they're engineering reality. So they show you visions of the future. They prepare you visually for something that's supposed to happen, but it's not just psychologically or mentally. What they're actually doing is they're designing energy fields that will take effect in the physical, and they're feeding it your energy. When it comes to the factors that make a magical ritual work versus not work, there are multiple ones. But the first one is that the different levels must be coherent. If you want to bring something that you want, an idea, into the physical, you must bring it from the mental, through the astral, into the etheric, and the etheric is the blueprint for what will happen physically. If you have incoherence in those levels, it can't take effect because the energy can't flow. You get what I'm saying? The energy can't flow from the higher levels into the lower levels. This is another problem that most magicians have. They're very incoherent in their worldviews and their understandings, and their, let's say, mental models that they use to operate and explain the world are contradicting what is actually taking place in the physical. So they're not basing it on truth, and that's why their magic can't take effect. You see, all of these things are interconnected. So a lot of magicians study magical systems a lot. So their mental level is highly charged. Maybe they even feed a lot of energy into those archetypes. So their astral level might even be charged. But they can't anchor it. They have no way to bring it into the physical because their models and the foundation that they built is not coherent and not strong enough to anchor their will. So their magic can't take effect in the physical. So imagine how pathetic it is. Like if you look at it like this, looking at somebody who says they're a magician and supposedly is in contact with spiritual forces that have complete control over the physical universe. But that person is, number one, not at least a millionaire and financially free, at least healthy, and at least has unlimited access to reproduction opportunities. That everything is cope. Everything else is cope. So if a person doesn't have at least those three factors, you shouldn't listen to them. Why would you listen to them? Obviously, there's something flawed in their worldview. Now, a lot of people are going to cope, of course. They're going to say, well, that has nothing to do with magic, because magic is just spirituality. Well, that's another lie that you've been taught by the Spirit Prison Matrix. They tell you spirituality is about something that, it's so abstract and it's all about the afterlife. Like, don't you see the fucking perversion in that? They teach you that your power is waiting after your death. So they're telling you literally to work yourself to death on the fucking fields, on the plantation. You keep working, I have my paradise here. But, you pray to that to that God that's going to reward you after you're actually dead. How fucked up is that? And on top of that, they have their paradise here. They have their paradise right here in this world. So don't buy into this bullshit, okay? So magic, a magician that hasn't mastered those levels of the physical, you shouldn't even listen to. They're not worth listening to, obviously. Self-evident. Okay, so we have constructed and condense down the energy fields from the mental through the astral, and now this will feed, this has already created, see the dynamic interplay of these archetypes on the astral has now created an etheric energy field. And people took part, by observing that, they have taken part in that magical ritual. All of their life force, their energy is at an unconscious level. They're not even realizing it, but their reality has been hijacked. And now their life force is, without their consent, going to flow towards this etheric energy field, which is the blueprint for physical reality. And once again, the factors that are necessary in order to take effect in the physical is there must be a coherence between those different levels, and there must be a lot of energy in the etheric. So the spirit prism matrix, one part of it is feeding you wrong ideas. So they lie to you, they give you false mental models that you fill your mental level up with. And at the same time, they expose you to their coherent, internally coherent mythology, and they show you an interplay of these archetypes, which will then hijack your life force and manifest their desired reality. See, the evil sorcerers and the elites of this planet are not many people. Not a lot of people. There are very, very few people who have been initiated into those levels and actually know what they're doing. The majority of even the elites are actors in this play. They're also being used. They have their specific, roles to play and all that stuff, but very, very few people, mainly the descendants of the creators of the spirit prism matrix, understand the esoteric dynamics and the esoteric levels of this game. But you can use this to control your own reality. Yeah. The rulers of this world are very few people, but they're not in control because they control money, which they do. They're not in control of this world because they control armies or politics, which they do. They control physical outcomes. There are many people who don't like the direction of where the world's going or what's taking place. But why does it not change? How is it possible that a very, very small elite controls billions of farm animals? Because that's actually what's taking place. Understanding how reality actually works. You think social media is just entertainment, right? That's a constant 24/7 ritual that you're observing, and your energy is being hijacked. You think movies and Netflix, like everybody thinks Netflix is bad. Like, why do they keep producing movies that are losing them money? Well, first of all, they don't give a fuck about money. And secondly, they're serving a specific agenda. What their purpose is not to profit from the production of the movie. The main primary purpose of a movie is to perform a magical ritual in front of your eyes and to hijack your life force. And guess what? Being angry about it helps the whole thing. Of course, because you're generating energy. Even more. It's, I don't know what to say. So, is it sad or is it funny? Either way, it's certainly interesting. Good. So I think I explained how that works. Now you can use that same formula to control your own life and do with it whatever the fuck you want. Now, in the Grail of the Serpent, at the beginning stages, there are different stages on what I teach and how I teach. The main goal is, see, I am teaching people how to liberate themselves from the spirit prison matrix. Because there will be a future in which we have defeated this spirit prison matrix, and humans as a whole will finally be able to reach our full potential. And this is a beautiful future in which we will literally have realized a godlike potential. And that future is coming. But we're still in the midst of the battle. And for that, it is important that as many people as possible are being liberated and educated on this topic. The Grail of the Serpent is a way to find people that eventually, hopefully, will be able to join me in that fight. That is the larger perspective. Because I am obviously the enemy of the spirit prison matrix. And I have suffered for that. I will continue. But that it begins by teaching people, first of all, how to use magic to control money and psychic seduction. You know, money, magic, and psychic seduction is what most people are interested in, because those are the two games that nobody can avoid in this world. Okay, reproduction and survival. Money represents, if you control at least your own personal finances, and there's almost scarcity when it comes to money, you are much freer than before. And the spirit prison matrix controls you much less. Number two, reproduction, which is you can use that to whatever, find your soulmate or whatever, you know, create your beautiful love life, or just enjoy, you know, as many encounters as you want. That's primarily what is being taught at the beginning levels of the Grail of the Serpent. And then those who are willing and able to go deeper are trained in deeper esoteric arts, and eventually can join my order. And hopefully, nobody has to do anything. But what I'm really looking for are allies that will stand, you know, in the lines with me against in this fight against the spirit prison matrix. That is really the purpose. But if you just want to make money and fuck bitches using magic, the Grail of the Serpent starts with that, right? So I'm going to wrap this video up here. And I think I got my point across. Check the links in the description under this video. The Grail of the Serpent is something that's going to change your life, and regardless of how deep you go. You will be empowered by knowledge that has been earned and will change your life. I guarantee that. Check my testimonials. There's no magician out there that gets testimonials like me. Have you ever checked? I don't know if you've ever done that. There is not. I'm the fucking only one who gets testimonials like this. That alone should tell you something. Okay. You can't fake the energy behind testimonials. Pay attention. All right. Good. I'll wrap it up here. Check the links in the description under this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.